What's up, Outliers? Today, we are taking a look at NVIDIA earnings, which so far they are down after hours. So taking a look at the top line performance, and then we'll take a look at some of the after hours movement. They announced a pretty big buyback, which is pretty bullish. They were expected at 92.5, so 93 cents a share. They came in at $1.05. So they beat there. However, right now, if we were to plot where it would open as of this moment tomorrow, it would be around the 176 handle. So kind of in here. So what's going on? Well, I started going through the release more out of curiosity at a pretty high level because I knew that I wanted to spend time going through the release today with you guys. And let me take a look at my tracker. I don't think I have any earnings stuff on in here. I don't. So there's no earnings play for me. Yeah, the vol wasn't priced well. So it had 2 out of the past 6 with big moves, 4 out of the past 12 with a 4-time multiple. And the original expected move is like 6.2%. And the average implied is 7.7. The average realized was 7.6. So overall, from a vol perspective, not interesting to me. So let's go to the top here and let's see. I also have the call so that we can flip through this a little bit. I don't know if they do closed captions. It looks like they do. Let's see. Yep, perfect. So we will have the closed captions running so that we can rocket through these. There's some interesting stuff that they covered. We just have to get to the deeper elements, but let's start here. So revenue up 6% Q1 and 56% year over year. So this is what a fucking starting point, right? Something to remember is we're not talking about some sort of like small growth stock. We're literally talking about NVIDIA. NVIDIA is huge. And yet we're seeing stuff like revenue growing 56% year over year. This goes to the broader conversations I've been having with just you guys on the various live streams about this very interesting effect that's happening right now that is valuation distortion. And we're seeing a lot of that happening. It's very difficult, I think, for people to feel comfortable with valuations of things. Yet, if you take a look at, again, this kind of growth, that's tremendous growth from just a revenue lens. So data centers, you can see, are flying off the shelf, 56% year over year. And Blackwell up 17%. So let's flip through the rest. Now, why am I honing in on NVIDIA? You all know why. It's because it's at the epicenter of AI. And it is a dominant force, not only in the S&P, but literally in the entire stock market because of the market cap, just how big this thing is. So let's see what else. No H2O sales to China-based customers in the second quarter, which the fact that that's even here is kind of impactful because obviously that's a significant revenue source that's cut down. NVIDIA benefited from 180 mil release of the reserved H2O inventory, so they're able to repurpose it. So that made sense. And unrestricted sales to customers outside of China. Okay, so gross margin 72 and 72.7, so about 72 for GAAP, non-GAAP. Let's get down to the numbers here. I mean, gross margins year over year or quarter over quarter are nuts. Year over year, interesting that it's softening just a little bit. Operating expenses are going up pretty significantly. That's to be expected, especially during like a massive scaling Operating income up even larger. This is, again, typically a preferable arrangement. If we see operating expenses expanding, it's not good, but sometimes it's warranted. And in this case, you can see it's absolutely being outpaced by operating income. So that's completely fine. Net income is really healthy year over year. Let's take a look at their general outlook. So they're looking at 54 billion. They're expecting margins to remain around the 73% handle. Operating expenses, high fives, low fours again between GAAP, non-GAAP. Okay. So let's see what's going on with the data centers. Revenue up 5%, quarter over quarter, 56% year over year. The RTX Pro 6000 Blackwell is coming to the enterprise servers at Disney, Foxconn, Hitachi, Hyundai. So, I mean, just massive integration with lots and lots of these absolute key places. This, again, is such a great example of something that I believe is at such a pivotal point of AI expansion and adoption, and it's just positioned so well to be a big part of literally the entire effect, I believe, at least. So you can see that reflected, right, in NVIDIA's chart. If we look over the last 3 years, take a look at this parabolic run here from the lows of that April sell-off. So this has been a strong leader. This is one of those names that is really fun for longer term moving average following approaches when you eventually get a break below them. Anyways, that stuff aside, let's take a look at the rest of this. NVIDIA Spectrum Ethernet. That's actually cool. I didn't know that. For gigascale AI, NVIDIA is expanding with different nations, France, Germany, Italy. So, I mean, it's just crazy to see not only how pervasive, but how global NVIDIA is and will continue to grow with all of these companies. Collaborated with partners to build and accelerate AI superconductors. Revealed model builders across Europe, Middle East, optimizing LLMs with NVIDIA Nemotron, which is also going to be integrated into Perplexity and so on, right? Like the thing to really take away from this overview is NVIDIA is just so deeply ingrained and like central to all of this adoption, both from just hardware solutions to then some of the more advanced implementation solutions. So supported OpenAI, leading GPT OSS 120B performance of 1.5 million tokens per second on a single NVIDIA Blackwell GB200 NVL72 rack scale system. I'm not going to pretend to know what that means because I don't. I can understand the context of what it's saying, especially this, like 1.5 million tokens per second. Obviously, I understand that, but I don't know much about this rack style system specifically. Boom. Also in the medical sector and industry, we expected that, but now this is a little bit biotechy. This, I think we already knew that Blackwell is kind of central to large language models and learning. What is this? MVFP4, 4-bit format, purpose-built to deliver exceptional interface inference latency for pre-training next generation LLMs. I don't understand what this is. Let's see. AI optimized data formats emerge as a key innovation in the effort. That makes sense. Narrow precision computation has already transformed inference with NVIDIA's introduction, MVFP4. Okay, I get it. To deliver exceptional inference latency, throughput, and efficiency while maintaining production grade accuracy. Yeah, okay. That's actually really cool. What is 4-bit quantization? Refers to the process of reducing precision model weights and activations to just 4 bits, which is obviously a big drop from 1632. That's kind of incredible. Huh. This is nuts. Gaming and AI PC second quarter revenue up 14%. DLSS 4 for any of the gaming nerds. We like that. GeForce Now install to play. So professional visualization, that's also up 32% year over year. This is, I'm very interested in this, the automotive leg and robotics. I think that this is going to be one of the really, really, really key drivers of AI and utilization longer term. So this is cool. 3% QOQ, 69% year over year. Full stack NVIDIA Drive AV software platform. Second consecutive end-to-end autonomous grand challenge at the Computer Vision Pattern Recognition Conference. Commenced initial shipments of NVIDIA Drive AGX Thor. That shit's so cool. Solid. Let's go through this. Nothing jumping out at me. Let's take a look at this. Nothing big here. Okay, so now let's flip through this. I want to specifically go to the Q&A. So this is going 2 times speed, so I'm going to let this run. Kirk says it's crazy that one customer was 23% of their revenue. Who is it? Do you know? I don't know who that is off the top of my head. I'm trying to see. Yeah. I don't see who it is. Kirk says they did not say who it was. I'm assuming XAI or hyperscaler. Yeah. Well, the thing is I'm not sure if it would be well, it could be XAI. Because the thing that would confuse me a little bit about that is I know the data center revenue actually didn't hit what they expected. So that's a little interesting to me. Let's see. I'll turn on the sound so that you guys can listen alongside. It's going to be 2 times speed, so it'll be pretty quick. That's by design.
You take a high look.
You'll just have to key in your ears. It's going to sound quick, but then your ears will adjust.
View and speak to your vision for growth into 2026, and as part of that, if you can kind of comment between networking data center, would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, CJ. At the highest level of growth drivers would be the evolution, the introduction, if you will, of reasoning agentic AI. Where chatbots used to be one shot, you give it a prompt and it would generate the answer. Now the AI does research, it thinks and does a plan, and it might use tools. And so it's called long thinking, and the longer it thinks, oftentimes it produces better answers. And the amount of computation necessary for one shot versus reasoning agentic AI models could be 100 times, 1,000 times, and potentially even more as the amount of research and basically reading and comprehension that it goes off to do. And so the amount of computation that has resulted in agentic AI has grown tremendously. And of course, the effectiveness has also grown tremendously. Because of agentic AI, the amount of hallucination has dropped significantly. You can now use it. You can now use tools and perform tasks. Enterprises have been opened up.
Which that is a really important note, is the ability to like use it for different tasks, schedule tasks. That's new. Even from like a very lay retail use of the tool, it's pretty incredible, and it's developing very, very quickly, which is, again, really, really neat. So this kind of thing, I still believe that we're at such a pivotal point, like not to be like overly dramatic, but I genuinely believe that this is a pivotal point in human history, especially with respect to technology. And it's like the early phase of this. There are going to be so many millionaires built off of this wave. Now, it can look really bumpy. There can be bubbles that burst, and there absolutely can be bumps along the way. But I think the technology itself at this point is undeniable, and the use case is undeniable. So I think learning as much about this is literally in everybody's best interest. It's also something that I talked about doing on some of the upcoming pro streams, is I want to go back and do a deeper look at individual names and timelines that individual names look interesting related to this entire wave. Because there's stuff like NVIDIA that, again, is still seeing revenue grow 56% year over year, being as big as it is. The cool part is that there are currently small cap companies that are growing thousands from the same thing, especially if they can position themselves well. Obviously, higher risk and all that stuff goes with it, but definitely an asymmetric profile available there. So let's continue.
As a result of agentic AI and vision language models, we now are seeing a breakthrough in physical AI, in robotics, autonomous systems. So the last year, AI has made tremendous progress, and agentic systems, reasoning systems, is completely revolutionary. And we built the Blackwell NVLink 72 system, a rack scale computing system, for this moment. We've been working on it for several years. This last year, we transitioned from NVLink 8, which is a node scale computing, each node is a computer, to now NVLink 72, where each rack is a computer. That disaggregation of NVLink 72 into a rack scale system was extremely hard to do, but the results are extraordinary. We're seeing orders of magnitude speed up, and therefore energy efficiency, and therefore cost effectiveness of token generation because of NVLink 72. And so over the next couple of years, you're going to, you asked about longer term. Over the next 5 years, we're going to scale into, with Blackwell, with Rubin, and follow-ons, to scale into effectively a $3 to $4 trillion AI infrastructure opportunity. The last couple of years, you have seen that CapEx has grown in just the top 4 CSPs has doubled and grown to about $600 billion. So we're in the beginning of this build out, and the AI technology advances has really enabled AI to be able to adopt and solve problems to many different industries.
Your next question comes from Vivek Arya with Bank of America Securities. Your line is open.
Thanks for taking my question. I just wanted to clarify the $2 to $5 billion in China. What needs to happen, and what is the sustainable pace of that China business as you get into Q4? And then, Jensen, for you on the competitive landscape, several of your large customers already have or are planning many ASIC projects. I think one of your ASIC competitors, Broadcom, signaled that they could grow their AI business almost 55-60% next year. Any scenario in which you see the market moving more towards ASICs and away from NVIDIA GPUs? What are you hearing from your customers? How are they managing this split between their use of merchant silicon and ASICs? Thank you.
Thanks for that. So let me first answer your question regarding what will it take for the H20s to be shipped. There is interest in our H20s. There is the initial set of licenses that we received. And then additionally, we do have supply that we are ready. And that's why we communicated that somewhere in the range of about $2 to $5 billion this quarter, we could potentially ship. We're still waiting on several of the geopolitical issues going back and forth between the governments and the companies trying to determine their purchases and what they want to do. So it's still open at this time, and we're not exactly sure what that full amount will be this quarter. However, if more interest arrives, more licenses arrives, again, we can also still build additional H20 and ship more as well.
NVIDIA builds very different things than ASICs. But let's talk about ASICs first. A lot of projects are started. Many startup companies are created. Very few products go into production. And the reason for that is it's really hard. Accelerated computing is unlike general purpose computing. You don't write software and just compile it into a processor. Accelerated computing is a full stack co-design problem. And AI factories in the last several years has become so much more complex because of the scale of the problems have grown so significantly. It's really the ultimate, the most extreme computer science problem the world's ever seen, obviously. And so the stack is complicated. The models are changing incredibly fast, from generative based on autoregressive to generative based on diffusion to mixed models to multimodality. The number of different models that are coming out that are either derivatives of transformers or evolutions of transformers is just daunting. One of the advantages that we have,
skipping forward a little bit,
available in every cloud. We're available from every compute for large KV caching necessary for agentic.
Previously, you talked about something in the 1 billion range, which I believe was just for compute by 20.
Here we
Thanks a
go.
lot. Jensen, I wanted to ask you about your 3 to 4 trillion in data center infrastructure spend by the end of the decade. Previously, you talked about something in the 1 billion range, which I believe was just for compute by 2028. If you take past comments, 3 to 4 trillion would imply maybe 2 billion plus in compute spend. And just wanted to know if that was right, and that's what you're seeing by the end of the decade. And wondering what you think your share will be of that. Your share right now of total infrastructure compute-wise is very high. So I wanted to see, and also if there's any bottlenecks you're concerned about, like power, to get to the 3 to 4 trillion. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks. As you know, the capex of just the top 4 hyperscalers has doubled in 2 years. As the AI revolution went into full steam, as the AI race is now on, the capex spend has doubled to $600 billion per year. There's 5 years between now and the end of the decade, and $600 billion only represents the top 4 hyperscalers. We still have the rest of the enterprise companies building on-prem. You have cloud service providers building around the world. United States represents about 60% of the world's compute, and over time, you would think that artificial intelligence would reflect GDP scale and growth, and would be of course accelerating GDP growth. And so our contribution to that is a large part of the AI infrastructure. Out of a gigawatt AI factory, which can go anywhere from 50 to plus or minus 10%, let's say 50 to 60 billion, we represent about 35 plus or minus of that, and 35 out of 50 or so $1 billion for a gigawatt data center. And of course, what you get for that is not a GPU. I think people, we're famous for building the GPU and inventing the GPU, but as you know, over the last decade, we've really transitioned to become an AI infrastructure company. It takes 6 chips just to build 6 different types of chips just to build a Rubin AI supercomputer, and just to scale that out, to a gigawatt, you have hundreds of thousands of GPU compute nodes and a whole bunch of racks.
So all that there is obviously him emphasizing their current footprint and effective dominance in a lot of those arenas. I wanted to show you some interesting activity today that caught my eye. So if we look on the overall volume for today, it was pretty heavy on the call side, 1.7 mil versus 1.3 on the put side, which typically is pretty interesting to me, especially coming into a earnings release. So if we take a look at where a lot of that happened, take a look here. It's for 29, so front term, and it's call premium by a landslide. This call premium is so heavy, so heavy. It's $478 million in call premium in 2-day expiration. And the put side is 147 million. So just massive, massive, massive overall skew, which is quite incredible, really. Net premium on the day. Notice how heavy the put premium was today. The put premium coming into the close was what? 24 mil versus 3.5 mil of call premium come in end of day. So this is super interesting. And most people, I think, generally are quite bullish on NVIDIA, and especially long term. I definitely am, for sure. But if we take a look at this activity compared to like Tuesday, yesterday, you can see that call premium actually ran negative. And then if we take a look at Monday, call premium was super, super positive. So there was some profit taking going on there, which I think tells us a pretty clear story. But if we take a look at the actual changes in OI and we run it as a percent, and then we'll do it as a chart just because no, I like the grid better. So the 142s or 143s started to build out pretty heavy. And then you can see this is just different kind of synthetics going on. And you kind of have to take it into context just because big percent changes can happen on things that don't have a lot of OI to start. So if we look across this, though, there is a pretty significant amount of put premium, especially at like the further out of the money handles. And if we look by expiration, again, I find the positioning over the course of the day really, really interesting. So there clearly is some informed positioning that was going on coming into the release. So right now they're still around what, the 175 handle? Yeah, 176. So Market Lounge says NVIDIA is going to get cooked down to 65.56 area. That would be interesting. That would definitely be interesting. Let's see. I feel like 56 would be like real low, but could be. Yeah, I see two nodes at 171, and I see another node here at 157 that look more interesting, and they get more pronounced as we come closer in time. My guess is a higher probability of it, if it gets pushed down into the low 170s, is probably stalling there, just because it looks like price itself has come down. If you think about no China sales, that's not news that came out today, right? We got to see a little bit of the impact quantified, but that's definitely not net new information. We've known that for some time. So when those kinds of things happen, the market is immediately going to begin discounting that out. So really what the market is saying is no sales to China so far really isn't that big of a deal, because the stock is still lingering right near all-time highs. So just a perspective to keep in mind. I think Snow had an interesting move. If you take a look at Snow comparatively, Snow reported it lost 89 cents when it was supposed to be negative 58 cents. So lost more than it was meant to. And yet it's up over 10%. Right now, after hours is at 226. It closed at 200. So stuff like Snow has been a different story. And I don't have an earnings play on in Snow. For context there, it had even worse of a vol edge. So 4 out of the last 6 were outsized moves, 7 out of the last 12 with a magnitude of 3. Average implied move was 10.4, average realized 13.4. And then the expected move, when I was looking at it originally, was 10.6. That guided down in terms of percent. So that was not priced well, literally at all. Interesting, I think. Sniz says, I wonder what NVIDIA will do for the rest of August. Big dip. Now, that's a good question. I think NVIDIA for the rest of August, that becomes a more interesting, a really interesting guess. If I were to ballpark it, I think I would expect to see this. Again, the earnings news will be digested over the next couple days, and that'll be whatever it is. It also does have a dividend coming up, so that will almost always provide a bit of downside pressure. So we'll see. The way I look at it is longer term, there are very few companies that are still as well positioned for this broader AI and broader AI adoption scheme. I don't see any other way that it could be construed. And the positioning that you see in here does reflect that to a degree. So it's still very net long premium, even pretty far out in time. So a lot of these are going to be, moderate sized positions that are playing the longer term expectation here. So if we take a look at NVIDIA. This I don't care. I do care. This is good. Okay. So this is just aggregating some of the larger positions. We'll include the bid. And it's looking at things that were generally asked or bought. We'll get rid of that. Let's see. And then we'll do like the last week. So a bunch of the stuff that you saw today was kind of a mixed bag, actually. Quite a mixed bag. But definitely all over the place too, which I think is a really, really important note. Super important note. Let's sort this really quick by premium. Let's get some of these big trades. So 6.9 million. This is out in December. Then 10 March, 2 million of the calls. Those came in. They're like slightly out of the money. 56 delta. Or 49 delta, sorry. 931. What was the bid offer on those? 930 to 935. So those look like those were sold. So this I also think is likely a bit bearish. I'm going to move the bid ask down so it's easier to compare those. There. Wrong one. My bad. Sorry. There we go. Yeah. And a bunch of the calls are being sold too. So a lot of times this kind of thing will happen too when you see companies that are really, really held in terms of stock positions, like really big stock positions. People will come into earnings and sell calls. So there's not a lot of really like pure directional stuff that I'm seeing here. I do tend to prefer to look for stuff that's out of the money. Main thing is it gives us a little bit of context on what the intent might be behind it. So this is specifically filtering out stuff that's in the money. Going to get rid of like synthetics and whatnot. Let's take a look at the vol really fast. So front vol is skyrocketed. That's actually a great trade, by the way. When you see front vol that pronounced, obviously. The interesting thing about this front vol 7-day interpolated is that that takes us out into next week. So this isn't relegated to like the upcoming earnings. If we do like near-term stuff, the near-term stuff will probably be even higher still, yeah. And that's because this stuff will interpolate, including the earnings release. Whereas the 7 days takes us past it. So there's a really interesting vol play here. We could take a look at like 7-day vol. Let's do that really fast to give an idea. This here. What I'm doing now is I'm just looking at what the vols are. And there's some kinks in this thing. Look at that. So the front, or I'm sorry, the at the monies, like high mid 80s, comes to the 70s, low 70s, then back up. So that is another tradable effect. But let's take a look at that compared to like 30-day. Yeah, look how different that vol is. So the 177s here are at 88.8% vol. And if we take a look at the monies here, the 180s, it's 58%. So you could even normalize if you want to do something like the same strike. The same strike is 85.6 vol against 58 vol. Like this is the kind of thing where we spend a lot of time on the pro streams, like trying to deconstruct these ideas because there's a lot of ways to trade these kinds of distortions. And this is a really, really great example of that. Because if you think that the front is elevated compared to the back, which you think is too low, then you can trade something like this. Now, you have to trade this kind of specifically because you can set this up a couple different ways, but I definitely would prefer to put these on for a debit just to cap the risk profile of it. And then it's also easier to delta hedge these if you want to play that vol specifically. Because if you take a look at the net delta on the position, it's like 2 delta. So really, really easy to just trim those off depending on the size that you put it up for. But it's an interesting distortion in the surface. And we can also visualize it here. Oh yeah, wait, I think Unusual Whales now has the actual vol surface tool somewhere. There it is. Yeah, this is cool that they have this now. So let's take this down. I guess it's kind of a bummer that you can't pick like 2 different ranges. I would want to do that. But let's take us down to like 20 days. Or 33 days, that's plenty. And then we definitely do not need to be at fucking half a strike. So we can take us closer to like the at the monies. Yeah, that's fine. So take a look at that distortion, right? You can see it pretty clear in here. Like all of these are disgustingly expensive comparatively to when you're looking to stuff out here that's in like the 200 handle ish, and further out, like again, a little more pronounced being out like 50 days. So that's really, 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 really interesting. And that's actually kind of a fun effect to trade, to sound pretty nerdy, I suppose. But yeah, take a look at 7-day IVP, 89.5% compared to like 60-day, which is at 31. So anyways, I'll get off that train. I just like options. It's kind of fun to look at. Let's see what you guys are thinking about. Kirk says CFO said if geopolitical subsidies, they could have 2 to 5 billion a quarter in China. Oh, subsides. My bad. If geopolitical subsides, they could have 2 to 5 billion a quarter in China. Yeah, I definitely could see that. There's downstream impacts of that. It's kind of like near-term gratification that I think that obviously would help NVIDIA quite a lot. But again, I still find the fact that the company is essentially hitting all-time highs despite all of that tells us a lot about the future expectations of it. Sniz says Trump is trying to pump his new baby Intel. He definitely is seemingly building kind of specific relationships with certain companies. So I absolutely can see what you're saying there. And the funny thing about Intel is that it has been, I mean, just sideways forever. I've been trading vol in here for a bit, mostly just really trading this insane range bound. Over the last year, I mean, take a look. The 1 standard deviation upside has been 23.5. 1 standard deviation downside, 1985. That's such a tight range for a freaking year. That's nuts. So Intel, I feel like Intel is one of those companies that it got too big and too slow. And it's still really dominant in certain sectors. You see Intel chips everywhere, but AMD is continuing to grow and eat more and more of Intel's lunch. I don't know what my current, because I just got a Zyphris. Let me see. I want to say that it's AMD, but let's see. Yeah, so yeah, it's using AMD Ryzen AI 9HX. So even in stuff like this, I'm seeing less Intel, still obviously all NVIDIA for graphics, right? Most of these have like the 5080s, 5090s even. But yeah, Intel just seems like such a fucking lost puppy, which is unfortunate because I do think that the company has potential. But it's behaving like a dinosaur. Actually, let's take a look at the range for AMD. Yeah, look at that. The one standard deviation range here is 141 to like 190, something like that. So yeah, just completely different activity in vol, which is super interesting. Clint says, is NVIDIA stock that you think of a humble brag gone? No swag. Not really. Yeah. I think NVIDIA, like I was saying before, I just view that NVIDIA is at the absolute epicenter of AI adoption. I think that it's not the primary tradable name for it. I actually, again, that's what I want to spend a little time deep diving more in detail, because I have an entire bucket of smaller AI related names. In my approach, I actually segment them by different expectations. So things like infrastructure early on, infrastructure, scaling infrastructure, solutions, stuff like that. So, but no matter what, AI is going to have NVIDIA as a pretty significant component to it. Then there's also stuff like Tesla, which Tesla is really interesting to me here. I had flattened out, I had a ratio call diagonal in there that I actually would love to re-enter if Tesla starts behaving, but it's very difficult to rationalize holding a ratio call diagonal in Tesla when it's just oscillating sideways, because the overall decay here is pretty significant. I was actually just looking at trading a covered strangle in something like this at some point, just because the vol is still really good, and I would transition it to a ratio call diagonal when it finishes this hyper sideways move. But if you look at 23 days to expiration options at a 30 delta, it's literally over 2% return, which is nuts. It's a really, really solid return for something this big. But again, that's not for free. The thing is super volatile, but that's a whole other thing. So summarizing NVIDIA, overall, NVIDIA fucking crushed it. They did really, really well. They even beat on top line EPS. I think the main thing is that the data center was soft. And I think that's a big reason why you see the market selling it off, at least as far as what I can see from here. I haven't started reading the news releases. Let's do that really fast, just out of sheer curiosity. But my guess is data center is probably the main. Let's see what they say. Decelerating growth. Say beat on earnings and revenue, issued guidance, stock slid. Yeah, data center revenue came in short of expectation. Yeah, that's exactly what I expected to see. So no sales of H20 processors to China-based customers, but they benefited from the release of 180 million worth of inventory to a client outside of China. So this is the other thing in terms of substitutes, is there are alternatives for them to at least move some of the inventory, which overall is good. All right. Anything you guys want to take a look at? Any questions that you have? It can be specific stock stuff, or it can just be theoretical options, market stuff. Happy to spend a couple minutes taking a look at anything that you would like to take a look at. And in the meantime, I want to take a look at Reese says ETH. Yeah. So ETH has been, what is this one? ETH A. And we've looked at this a couple times together, but ETH itself has been, I mean, just parabolic. And I've actually been doing a bunch of research into momentum approaches in the crypto markets, which is absolutely fascinating, by the way. There is such a huge opportunity there. I literally cannot overstate it. I started running it in kind of a testing allocation of the portfolio. So it's using live money to get like real data. But momentum following in crypto itself has been just very, very interesting. Absolutely worth your time looking into. And especially if you're more of like an active style trader, not meaning you have to sit there all day. There's literally nothing that I do that you have to sit there all day in front of a computer and look at. It's like the exact opposite reason why I got into the market. I started trading for fucking freedom, not screen slavery. But that said, as you guys know, I do like the markets a lot, so I spend a lot of time looking at it nonetheless. But there's a big difference when you have to do it versus when you want to do it. So ETH, I still think, is demonstrating like really, really strong momentum. And you can see we had big leg up, consolidation, compression in the consolidation, and then breakout. Then another leg, consolidation, less of a narrowing in the consolidation, which is actually quite interesting, and then another breakout. But if you take a look at the way that these breakouts look and then the way that the consolidations look, they're very, very different. The durations of them are very, very different. And the way that they're constituting is, again, very, very different. But the fund flows into something like ETH A are still really, really strong. So if we take a look at, not this, we're actually seeing premiums here in ETH A starting to turn slightly negative. And then if you take a look at flows, oh, my bad. Let's find ETH. Where you at? Did I skip it? There it is. So flows themselves are still pretty long. So people are still building out pretty significant positions in here, as far as I can see, at least. Take a quick look in here. Yeah, so super long. On the call side, 28 mil in premium in the 19 SEP. And we can actually see pretty strong short overall premium here at the 35s. That's pretty interesting. Let's take a look at the actual chain itself. So long on the call side. Here's the put side. So the put side here is 2. This is 26 SEP. And there's the puts at the 54. So that's actually probably a synthetic long. Yeah. Looks super strong to me. That's mostly what I see here. Cool. Well, that's all I got then. I don't see any of the questions. So I'm going to sign off. As always, if you guys need anything, let me know. Be an outlier. See you guys later.